In every marriage, there are disagreements. But what happens when a wife crosses a line, turning love into control? My wife gave me a childish ultimatum that no husband should ever hear. Do this, or I walk. She thought I'd beg. She thought I'd fold. Instead, her demand became the reason I packed her bags and kicked her out. This is how her ultimatum backfired, and how I finally got my justice. Before we continue, please subscribe to the channel, and let us know where you're listening in the comments. I never thought I'd be the man sitting here, telling a story about betrayal, heartbreak, and justice. If you had asked me a few years ago, I would have sworn my marriage was built on love, trust, and loyalty. I believed in us. I believed in her. Her name was Jessica. When we first met, she was radiant, full of life, laughter, and charm. She had this way of making everyone in the room notice her, and I was the one she chose. At least, that's what I thought. In the beginning, everything felt like a dream. We traveled together, shared secrets late at night, held hands like high school sweethearts. I wasn't rich, but I worked hard, and Jessica always said she loved that about me, that I was dependable, grounded, and the kind of man who'd never let his family down. And I didn't. I paid the bills, fixed the house, and stood by her side. But over time, the woman I married slowly began to change. First, it was small things. A comment about how she deserved more expensive vacations. A complaint that our car wasn't flashy enough. Little digs about how her friends' husbands made more money, bought nicer things that I'd brushed it off. Every marriage has its bumps, right? But those bumps became cracks. And those cracks widen into something darker. The control begins. It started with money. Jessica wanted control of the finances, even though she never contributed much to them. She said, "It's easier if I handle everything, babe. Less stress for you." I wanted to trust her, so I agreed. But soon, she was making big purchases without asking me. New clothes, jewelry, $1,000 purse on sale. When I confronted her, she'd pout and say, "Why are you being so controlling? Don't you trust me?" That line became her weapon. Anytime I pushed back, I was suddenly the bad guy, the controlling husband who didn't appreciate her. Still, I let it slide. I told myself love was about compromise, about picking your battles. But deep down, I felt something shifting. Jealousy creeps in. It wasn't just money. Jessica became jealous of everything. If I worked late, she accused me of cheating. If I spent time with my brother or old friends, she said I was neglecting her. She even hated that I called my mom every Sunday night. "Why does she need to hear from you so much? I'm your wife. I should come first." She'd snap. That one cut deep, because family meant everything to me. And Jessica knew that, but she didn't care. Slowly, she was isolating me, pulling me away from friends, family, even hobbies. The world got smaller, just me and her. And still, it wasn't enough for her. The first big betrayal. The night I'll never forget came on our 3rd anniversary. I planned a surprise dinner, booked her favorite restaurant, bought roses, even picked up a necklace I knew she'd been eyeing. But when I got home from work, ready to surprise her, she wasn't there. Her phone went straight to voicemail. I sat there for 2 hours, staring at the dinner I'd set up, the candles burning low. Finally, she walked in, heels in her hand, hair a mess. She looked surprised to see me waiting. "Where have you been?" I asked. "With friends," she said casually, tossing her shoes aside. "Don't look at me like that. I'm allowed to have fun." Something in her tone was sharp, dismissive, like she didn't even care that she'd missed our anniversary. When I pressed her, she snapped, "Why do you always make everything about you? Maybe if you spoiled me more, I wouldn't need to go out so much." That broke me a little. Here I was, trying to make our marriage special, and she was out partying, maybe even worse. But instead of fighting, I swallowed the pain. I told myself, maybe she's just stressed, maybe it'll pass. I didn't know then that this was just the beginning, ultimatums in disguise. Over the next months, Jessica's demands became bolder. She wanted a bigger house, even though we couldn't afford it. She wanted me to stop talking to certain friends because she didn't like them. She even hinted that I should switch jobs. Not because mine was bad, but because she thought I should be making six figures by now. And every time I pushed back, she'd dangle an ultimatum in front of me. Not directly, not yet, but in little threats. If you really love me, you make this work. If you don't do this, I don't know how long I can stay happy here. I'm not saying I'll leave, but I deserve better. That word, deserve. She used it like a hammer, beating me down until I started to believe maybe I wasn't enough. The breaking point. Then came the night everything changed. It was late. We were sitting at the kitchen table, bills spread out, tension thick in the air. Jessica leaned back in her chair, crossed her arms, and said it plain as day. Either you give me what I want, or I'm gone. Silence filled the room. I stared at her, waiting for her to laugh, to say she was joking. But she didn't. She stared back, cold and serious. It wasn't just a fight anymore. It wasn't just a complaint. It was an ultimatum. A childish, selfish, destructive ultimatum. And in that moment, something inside me snapped. I didn't respond right away. I just sat there, looking at the woman I'd once believed was my forever, realizing she was testing me in the cruelest way possible. She thought I'd beg. She thought I'd fold. But what she didn't know, what she couldn't imagine, was that this ultimatum would become the very reason she lost everything. At first, I thought things would settle down. Maybe she just needed time. Maybe it was just a phase. But instead, things only got worse. Her complaints became daily. If I came home late from work because of a meeting, she'd accuse me of choosing my job over her. If I didn't immediately respond to her texts, she'd assume I was ignoring her on purpose. What hurt most wasn't the constant nagging. It was the way she slowly chipped away at who I was. The man she fell in love with, the man who was passionate about his career, his family, his hobbies. She didn't want that man anymore. She wanted someone she could mold, control, own. It got to the point where I started walking on eggshells in my own home. I couldn't joke the way I used to, couldn't relax in front of the TV without a comment, couldn't make a simple choice about what to eat for dinner without it turning into a debate. I felt like a stranger in my own house. One night, I came home exhausted. I'd had a brutal day at work, deadlines, meetings, stress. All I wanted was to sit, eat, and breathe. But the moment I walked in, I knew something was off. She was sitting at the table, arms crossed, eyes sharp. "Sit down," she said flatly that I sat. Then came the words I'll never forget. She said, "It's me or your family. Choose." At first, I laughed. I thought she was joking. How could she possibly be serious? But the look on her face told me she wasn't. See, my family is everything to me. My parents, who worked their whole lives to give me opportunities. My sister, who's always been my best friend. They've been with me through thick and thin. And here was my wife, the woman who promised to stand by my side, demanding that I cut them out of my life because she didn't like the way they treated her. I was stunned. I asked her why she felt this way. She launched into a list of slights. Things so small, so petty, that they almost didn't make sense. My mom didn't compliment her dress at dinner. My sister didn't text her back fast enough. My dad gave me advice about work without asking her opinion first. It was absurd. But to her, it was betrayal. And in her mind, the solution was simple. "Either you cut ties with them," she said, "or I'll leave." There it was, the ultimatum. For a second, my world stopped. Ultimatums in marriage are poison. They're not about love, they're about control. And I realized right then, this wasn't about my family at all. This was about power. She wanted to see how far she could push me, how much I would bend. But here's the thing. She underestimated me. I didn't shout. I didn't cry. I didn't beg. I simply looked her in the eyes and said, "If that's how you feel, then maybe you should start packing." She blinked. She didn't expect that. Her face turned red. She started yelling, accusing me of choosing them over her, calling me selfish, heartless, ungrateful. She slammed doors, threw things, demanded that I take it back. But I didn't. For the first time in months, I felt calm, strong, because I finally saw the truth. This wasn't love anymore. This was a power game. and she had just lost. After that night, the silence in the house was louder than any of her yelling had ever been. She slammed the bedroom door, locked herself inside, and didn't speak to me for days. When she finally came out, I could see the smugness in her eyes. She thought I would break first, that I'd come crawling back, apologizing, begging her to stay. But instead, I had been planning. I gathered every text message, every voicemail, every bitter little note she had written when she didn't get her way. I spoke to my family, and for the first time, I told them everything. The manipulation, the ultimatums, the way she tried to tear us apart. They weren't surprised. My mom said quietly, "We saw it, but we didn't want to interfere." My sister shook her head. "We were just waiting for you to see it too." And they were right. The next week, my wife marched into the living room with her bags packed. She thought she was in control. She said, "This is your last chance. Cut them off or I'm gone." I stood up, looked her straight in the eyes, and said, "Good, then go." Her face twisted with shock. She froze. This wasn't the script she'd written in her head. She expected a fight, expected tears, expected me to beg. But instead, I handed her the divorce papers, already drawn up, already signed. That's when the screaming started. She said I'd regret this forever. She threatened to take everything. She swore she'd make me pay. But the thing about ultimatums is, once you give one, you can't take it back. I told her calmly, "Love isn't control. Marriage isn't blackmail. You wanted to test me and you lost." She stormed out, slamming the door so hard the walls shook. And just like that, the silence returned. But this time it wasn't heavy. It wasn't suffocating. It was peaceful. For the first time in years, I could breathe again. A few weeks later, friends asked if I missed her, if I regretted what I'd done. I didn't, because the truth is, this wasn't about revenge. This was about justice. Her ultimatum wasn't just childish. It was cruel. It was meant to break me, to isolate me, to cut me off from the people I love most. But instead of breaking me, it set me free. I realized something powerful. Sometimes justice doesn't come in a courtroom or in some big dramatic showdown. Sometimes justice is simply choosing yourself, refusing to be controlled, taking back your life. And in the end, that's exactly what I did. So, if you've ever been given a cruel choice, if someone has ever tried to make you trade your happiness for their control, remember this. Ultimatums reveal who people truly are, and walking away might just be the sweetest justice of all. If this story hit home for you, if you've ever faced betrayal, ultimatums, or injustice, you're not alone. We share stories like this every single day here on True Revenge. So hit subscribe and turn on the bell, because the next story might feel just like yours.